You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pace Radio Show. It's May the 10th, and we're live here at paceradio.net as well as at cbgtv.com. I'm Al Graham, and joined by my joint host, Tamara Cartwright. How you doing, Tamara?
Tired.
And you just got home from work too, so.
Yeah, I did, but I got home early enough tonight that I'm not late, so that's good because I got off at 5:30.
That's right.
I'm tired. It was Seniors Day, so you know what Seniors Day brings? We were backed up all the way to the back of the store. It was crazy.
Wow, really? Eh?
All spring and then people wanting to buy fertilizers and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it was nuts because 10% off day for seniors when it's spring. They're just lined up.
That's right. Yeah. Any cannabis people looking for clones that you don't sell? Did anybody ask you for any samples or anything?
People do ask us whether we can access clones or not, and we could, but since we were broken into again last night, and we get broken into on a regular basis, trying to think about putting cannabis clones out in a back greenhouse isn't really appealing to us at the moment. And that's what we'd have to be a 19 plus. We'd have to have a greenhouse out in the back. It would have to be secured, and we'd have to have security guards and all this fine stuff. So the res does have clones. So I sent them out there, and I've got a couple friends that if we, talk to them really nicely, I will help them get clones.
But sometimes some people just come in jokingly, like when we're doing the TY events at home shows and that, people would come up to us and ask us for samples. So we would offer them a sample of the magazine. But, being that you're a garden shop and it's that time of the year, somebody might jokingly ask you about some clones. So.
Well, they come in and they smell. We can smell what they're smoking.
Yeah. Good.
But I'm mainly
Seniors Day and cannabis questions could get interesting.
They do. Actually, that's quite funny because I helped a couple, not today, but last week. And they would come up from Mexico and they were looking for this specific hydroponic box that they can get in Mexico, and how much farther they feel that Mexico is ahead of us because they import a lot of stuff from Europe. And we don't have anything of the sort. They were trying to explain this to me, and it's actually got a water table where you can put soil in, and then it self-feeds the soil. And they told me they were growing all kinds of cannabis in that. And I was laughing. I'm going, but you're growing it. He goes, yeah, Mexico is better. And I'm like, oh. And they were in their 90s. Not kidding. And they just come back because they spend so much time in Mexico and they come back to Canada for the summer, right? Or snowbirds. And he had just turned 90. And they were telling me about
sounds like a flood table. Sounds like a flood table other than just the empty soil there.
But they didn't bring it back they don't bring it back to Canada because they leave it at their house in Mexico. Yeah. When they wanted to try and find something here, but not big because they didn't want to have to deal with it in their RV. Because when they come back to Canada, they come back in their RV, right? So
no pictures?
No, he didn't have any pictures. I told him to find me some. But
that can help.
Well, a lot of times, because people come in and asking me about flowers, and I'm like, I don't know the name of every damn flower out there. Like I try, but I don't know, right? Show me a picture, and then we go to Google because Google's wonderful for all these things.
Well,
right?
There's those apps now that you can show a picture to an app, and it'll tell you what the plant is.
Yeah. But these ladies will come in with some long, God forbidden name of, I want this lithoramnium, hydrangea, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, we got hydrangeas over here. I know what those are.
Are any of these close?
A lot of people go back to the tent. And I've got a cucumber growing hydroponically back there that is probably 18 feet long now. With the
18 feet long cucumber. Holy smokes.
And it's growing in a bucket with Remo's nutrients. It's got powdery mildew. We can't seem to get rid of the powdery mildew. We don't know what the
Oh,
heck's going on with the powder. We've been peroxiding. We've been doing all kinds of stuff with it. We don't know if it's because the humidity in the store, because of all the plants, is just
could
causing.
be.
And we also had
Yeah.
2 microgreens growing, because we also have microgreens growing hydroponically in a PVC pipe that I fandangoed. I made Rob make it for me. He had the little circular saw. He made me this little, and it's got little lettuces growing all along it, right? But yeah, my
Right.
little cucumber in the back, it's got several flowers. The peppers we've got right now are like this, and we planted
Oh,
those 3.5 months ago in water. Everything's growing hydroponically, because that's my specialty, right? Is the hydroponics in the back.
right.
So meanwhile, I'm dealing with seniors and I'm running a till at the front, but anything that comes up with the hydro section or cannabis, it's like, Tamara, we need that at the back. So I spend a bit of time
Right.
in kind of like, and then farm and feed too. Like, I'm just everywhere.
They're all over the place.
I'm just nuts. Yeah. I got no marbles
Well,
left.
hey, you get to wear a shirt to work that says "I help you grow cannabis" or whatever.
Yeah, it does. Big pot leaf on it says, "We know homegrown."
Yeah, there
That's
you go.
Yeah,
There you
I
go.
didn't wear that. I wore that on Monday or Sunday or something. And there's my husband trying to phone me again on when he knows I've got a show.
It's Wednesday.
This is every week, and even on Monday night, he was phoning me at 8:30. I'm like, dude, like I'm on the air. Like,
Yeah.
time difference
Yeah.
between here and Alberta is not that far.
No, not that far. No,
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 same.
no, it's not. All right, what do you say? Time to bring in our guest?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, let's do that. At the time, we'd like to welcome our guest, who is helping patients and consumers with access and much more. We'd like to welcome Scott Jennings to the Pace Radio Show. Hello, Scott. How you doing?
Hey, Al, I'm doing good. Hey, Tamara.
Nice to see you. So,
Nice
what
to
do you
see
tell us
ya.
where you're from and how you got into cannabis?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm originally from New York, just outside New York City. So I grew up in Westchester County, White Plains. And, my parents were a fan of the plant, although they tried to hide it from me when I was a youngster. But couldn't hide it from me for long because I wasn't sleeping very well and I had a very active mind. And I quickly learned about a toke before bed, gives you a very good night's sleep. And so it's probably my early teens that I started to get familiar with cannabis. And it's a long journey. I think in your teens, you try a bunch of different substances and you don't know one from the other. And I went on to go to school in Virginia. And, down in Virginia, they sure show you how to drink a bottle of whiskey. You go out to the farmlands and you bring some whiskey and man, I fell in love with whiskey in college, but cannabis was still there, still prevalent. And I experienced different type of cannabis there. Coming from New York, you had very high quality cannabis. And then down in Virginia, it was, I heard you talking about your guests from Mexico. We had some lower quality stuff from Mexico in college. And I think that was everybody in college's favorite because it was very, very affordable. And then once in a while, some people would say, well, did you bring that stuff from New York? Do you got that, Northern Lights or something?
Where's the good stuff?
You just bring a little good stuff with the bad stuff. And, it all kind of works its way out.
Yeah.
And the good stuff was the Northern Lights, right?
What was that? Did I get stuck with it?
No, I said the good stuff was the Northern Lights.
Oh, yeah. It was the Northern Lights. It was the White Widow, Northern Lights. It smelled much better. It popped. It was just night and day. I mean, the other stuff we were smoking in college, I mean, geez, you could go pick up some dirt and it was, very. Yeah.
Mexican swag.
Yeah.
It sounds like ditchweed or something. Like what do they call it? Yeah, Mexican brickweed. Brickweed.
I didn't want to throw a label on it, but yeah, it was some it was definitely some swag and a lot of seeds too. And as an ambitious college kid, I couldn't help but buy a bunch of it. So I bought a bunch of it, and I was helping the guys out in college and sharing it, and anyway, that was part of the journey. But really, after college, I went back to New York City. And I worked on Wall Street and I owned a bar. And I think between college and owning a bar in New York City, I really learned how bad alcohol is. You know, I had some
Oh,
crazy,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, a young 20-year-old with good Wall Street money in his pocket and owning a bar and running the bar, the trouble we got into was quite crazy.
I imagine, yes.
Yeah.
just that age, eh? Full of energy and
Thank you.
yeah.
Full of energy, and there was a rule on Wall Street: your first paycheck, you have to go spend it at the bar. So I sure made a lot of friends, you know, buying
Oh, yeah.
everybody Irish car bombs and
Oh,
shots
yeah.
and you name it. And you know, it wasn't until I came out to California that I understood a little bit more of a wellness aspect with cannabis. And you know, out here, I came out to California. I said, guys, don't we go to the bar? And everybody said, no, we don't go to the bar. We have to drive everywhere out here. And so the drinking culture is much less out here versus New York. Everybody goes downstairs. Everybody starts drinking. And out here, everybody has to drive. And cannabis was much more prevalent out in California. I mean, very, very prevalent in New York, but more so out the back door or going for a walk. In California, it was very much on the streets or on the beach. And so, you know, my journey started to push away from alcohol and started to pull more towards cannabis. And it blossomed into where I am here today.
So I would imagine the experiences that you had owning the bar, you know, being around that, you know, the alcohol and all that, and seeing the things, would be something that you probably would maybe like to. I know some people try to replicate in the cannabis industry of things.
Yeah,
as far as lounges or anything like that.
I think like I like the saying like history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And so I think that we want to do that, but we want to do it differently. So there's a good buddy in New York City, and he's just itching for it to, you know, the lounges. And he says New York City's the mecca of hospitality. And so he just has this idea in his head. He can't wait for Dave and Buster's and a cannabis lounge to come together so that you can have, you know, all your fun and your cannabis under one hood. And I think that's a pretty good vision.
Yeah. Well, at one time, I'm in Ontario up here in Canada, and I'm near Toronto. And at one time, there had to be at least 10 lounges in Toronto. And then once legalization came, they had to shut down due to the smoking bylaws and stuff like that, right? That came into play. So
regulations can take the fun out of it, and that's what we're seeing here in California. I mean, there's some very expensive lounges, but you know, it goes back to what I heard you two talking about, affordability and access. It's like, you know, if you're going to go to a lounge and you're going to get charged to go in, and then they're going to upsell the cannabis, and then, you know, taxes are 35+% here in California, you're kind of turning down the dial of fun. And so the lounges just haven't taken off. You know, I've been really interested to say, give me an event license. You know, we've done some private dinners, and I'm sure you guys have had cannabis dinners up there. Those are wonderful. You know, farm to table, bring in a chef, have some cannabis. I mean, that is a very good experience. And, you know, even the event licenses haven't opened up. And I think that's just, you know, it's all restricting the plant and the industry from breathing. You know, it's just
it is a lot of that. Yeah, there's a fellow by the name of Thomas up here, Aggressive Organics. He's done dinners and things like that, as far as even contests, cannabis, like chefs and contests and stuff at events.
Yeah,
so
shout out to Chef Jordan Wagman. He's up your way, and he's phenomenal.
Yes.
And he, you know, he cut out sugar, gluten, and he has psoriasis. So he uses cannabis for his psoriasis. He got rid of gluten, which, you know, can cause a flare up in the psoriasis. And so, you know, I think chefs just do such a great job. Like when we talk about education at the dinner table, it's so authentic. You know, your guard's down and you're willing to listen to the chef. And so I've been a big fan of entering, you know, through the food space in an authentic setting like that.
Right. Yeah. Now you mentioned the cannabis friendly family, so that was you know, sometimes it's always easy to ask somebody, how did the family react when they found out how cannabis, was helping them with their condition. But your family obviously already knew all those things, right?
I remember going, me and my brother were going for lunch, and we had rolled a joint, and he said, "Mom's coming." And I said, "Mom's coming." I said, "You can't have Mom come, then we're going to light the joint." And Mom got in the car, and sure, we're passing it around. And, me and my mom have a great relationship because she is somebody that's also understood that, the booze isn't that good. And the doctors got to her, and she went from taking one pill a week to the Monday through Sunday kit. And she's very vocal. She says, "It doesn't make me feel any good. It hurts. The pills hurt my stomach. They don't make me feel good." And so she was a big proponent of us getting into the edible game because, I have no problem with smoking, but, I could see her coughing, and I could see that being a resistance to her getting, the medicine she needed.
Yeah. And why should somebody be forced to smoke cannabis in order to medicate with it when there's, we know of so many other options? And if you're 70 years of age, why do you want to even start smoking?
Right.
She went to a Vipassana retreat, which is a 2-week silent meditation retreat. And she was a cigarette smoker and a cannabis smoker. And she came out of that and she left all smoking behind her. And she had quite an experience. But now she loves Pantry edibles, and she just can't wait to open up a dispensary and be, front of line there, educating patients. Because as we kind of came together here, Al, I think patient to patient is the best way to educate. A lot of us don't want to hear that top down noise anymore because there was so much misinformation from the top down, and we'd rather hear from each other on how does it help you. And when my mom tells her story, her friends perk up and they start calling me and, "When are you coming to New York?"
Yeah. That was sort of what got you and I to get together, was the fact about patient stories and how that can make a difference to so many people by sharing them.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. And having community that's all encompass helping each other, right?
Absolutely. And I spoke to a cannabis researcher that I saw on your page. You have a lot of cannabis researchers, and she may be somebody you want to talk to. And, she said a lot of people approach things from a data set, right? And you look at the data and then you make a conclusion. And you see that all the time with cannabis, right? It's like, oh, here's what cannabis consumers want. And it's like, you're not looking at the people and then forming an opinion. You're looking at a small data set that's probably incomplete and making an opinion. And I think that whole approach is flawed because the data is only going to show you a fraction. I mean, there's still so many consumers not showing up in the data on how they're using it and how it helps them. And I know that it's so personalized, right? So like even in my journey, as I launched an edible brand, I love flower now more ceremonial, because in college, I realized my tolerance went up, and in 1 joint, then 10 joints. And I said, well, what if I had the edibles, and then on a weekend in a ceremonial setting, I had a joint, and it allows me to appreciate the flower that much more and, kind of balance things out. And I love sharing those stories. And there's a lot of those stories out there. And I think that top down, you're just trying to hit a generalization instead of, treating cannabis consumers like they are, very individualized, very personalized.
Yeah. We are. We're all, especially as patients, we're all different. Everybody reacts different to it, and each person's got a different condition and why they're using cannabis, So.
Absolutely. And the innovation's just starting. I mean, I remember being a little surprised when you saw the brands starting with suppositories. So that's interesting. I go with curiosity, right? I don't go with a judgment. I go with curiosity. And when you hear their story and why they created it and how it helps them, who wants to judge that? But you're not going to see that show up in mainstream publications. That's going to be her sharing her story. Now, if we get her story more publicly broadcasted, I'm sure there will be other people that would associate with that.
Yes. Oh yeah, for sure. Exactly. And there'll be people out there who've never heard about using suppositories with cannabis in order to work on conditions. And the fact that you can take in more that way as well.
Yeah. I believe that Canadians are actually, I think, more accepting and open to cannabis use than Americans are. Like, I don't know why. I think it's because Americans have such a much larger population and they're not as open-minded, I guess. Maybe that's what it is. But you go in Canada, like but we do have 2 provinces that still aren't allowed to grow cannabis for themselves, like in their provinces, right? So I think it's province to province too. But I find that maybe here in Ontario too, I think I also have the same opinion. Most people are pretty accepting of medical. Most people want to hear more about it. And I think Americans are still, like, because the southern states are so apt against it, and they think it's all led to crime and all these things, right? But I really think that that's how legalization kind of was able to happen in Canada, that we're more tolerant of, people's like medical conditions. Like, we've got disability and we've got things that people are really like low income help and stuff. So our like marginalized people are kind of like really kind of looked at as people, right? So I think that was why it was easier for us to legalize in Canada, to be honest, like federally, right?
Yeah, I think the medical patients really opened the door, and I think unfortunately capitalism came rushing in. And I think one of the things that scares a lot, like I was talking in dispensaries that we sell into, and they said, well, the traffic's down. I said, well, when you're selling a commodity just to get somebody high, that it's discretionary, right? Versus a staple, right? A staple is something you always want to have in your house. And so, when it went recreational, we just pushed the medical patients aside and we tried to sell as much as we could. And we lost our bedside manner of, what are you here for? How does it help you? When you come back, you ask them another question. Instead, there's this rapid turnover of bud tenders that's destroying that connection. And if you went to a doctor, every time you went to your doctor's office, you saw a new doctor, you'd be scratching your head. You said, something's off here. I don't want to see a new doctor.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to. They're not allowed to. They're not allowed to ask questions.
Yeah, here in Canada,
we can't. They can't. They're not allowed to.
we don't have any medical storefronts in Canada. All our stores are recreational. So you can go into a recreational store and buy suppositories and facial scrubs. But you can't ask them. They're not allowed to talk anything medical. So all our stores. So right now there's a compassion club that's been operating since 1996 in Victoria, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Clubs, and they're taking the federal government to court and the provincial government to court in order to allow those type of stores, so people can go in and ask questions. Right? But
that's absurd. There's a lot of absurd things here, but not being able to ask questions. I mean, I can't even imagine that.
In fact, they can't even advertise. They can't even wear a pot leaf. They can't blow glass. In Manitoba, they can't grow for themselves. In Quebec, you can't even smoke a joint on the street in certain areas.
Quebec, you can't even sell a shirt with a pot leaf on it.
Yeah. And in British Columbia, here our Strata, which is a lot of the apartment buildings are owned by this company called Strata. So even in British Columbia, if you live in a Strata building, you're not allowed to grow or smoke in them either.
Listen, as far as I'm
concerned, 90% of the occupation rentals in British Columbia are owned by this Strata.
Yeah.
We pay taxes for them to help us, not hurt us. And that's one of the things we're very frustrated about. It's like, you're talking about a graphic on a shirt. Like, what is the government doing stepping in and preventing?
Oh, I know. It's sad. Really. Yeah. It's just.
And they took it to court, and the court allowed them. They said it was constitutional for them to be able to, prohibit this behavior, this activity. So nobody's allowed to grow them. Nobody's allowed to advertise it. In Canada, like, even our packaging is all like black. Like there's no anything on it, because if there is, then it's advertising and it's appealing to children. And that was all it was about. Trudeau came out not too long ago and made a comment which really kind of pissed me off, is that he never intended cannabis to become an industry. He only wanted it for health and safety purposes, to keep people safe and keep it away from the children, to keep the children safe. And that's why they put it into this regulation through, so that you had to be at a certain age. But he never foreseen a cannabis industry, and that was never the intention of the government, to build a new industry. He never intended for tobacco either, or alcohol. So these are the things that they've kind of been forced into because they had no choice, because they saw that
the courts, the patients in the courts were forcing things on them.
Constitutional rights, right? We do have In Canada, they're privileges. Let's be, difference from the American Constitution and the Canadian Constitution. And if you live in Australia, they got no constitution. So, you know what I mean? There's so many different countries, different laws, and that's what I mean. We need to legalize cannabis worldwide and give it to everybody. So it becomes a dietary supplement, is what it should be. A health, therapy.
Yeah.
However you want to look at it, sprouts or smoking or eating or whatever, it should be put on the produce tables right next to a tomato.
Well, the one thing I bet on all the time is don't back a patient into a corner, especially if it's a mother. And when you back patients into a corner, look, you don't have much else to fight for but your health at that point. And so what I love about the internet and what we're doing here is there's a lot of stories of Americans connecting with Germans, and people were connecting around the world and saying, hey, they're saying this is no good, but I used it on my child, or I used it in this way. And this is why the internet kind of is scary to a lot of governments, because it can connect people and it can empower us when we learn from each other. And hopefully by banding together, we can push for, better rules and regulations around it.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the internet has really propelled that worldwide when it comes to legalization.
Well, my guest on my last show is from Australia, Murray Cassetto. He lives in Nimbin, Australia, and Australia has legalized for medical patients, and he's finally gotten his script. But they've got Canadian companies providing them.
They can't grow their own?
I mean, what does the government say you can't grow a plant? The government is...
And they're paying about the same prices. Like say the hot, when we first got that, the LP started. So they're paying $100 for 10 grams, same as $10 a gram, same as we are. Like the prices are about the same. But he told me that they're Canadian companies, but the Canadian companies are down in Australia growing it.
So the citizens, you're in California, right? Obviously, and people, and it sounds similar like here in Ontario, where retail or municipalities could opt out of retail sales. People can grow. People can grow, and there's that's a big fight with capitalism. In Chicago, they're trying to not allow home grow. In California, you can definitely grow up to 6 or 8 plants. The home grow tents, if you will, are doing pretty well. But yeah, I mean, that's there, but it's state by state, and everybody's waiting for the elephant in the room, the federal government, to put some. Yeah, it's so ridiculous because there's so many states that have the medical, and the legalized states numbers are gathering steam all the time, but yet the federal government still is on the wrong end of this. Like, what can get them to change? If there was a hypocrisy meter, it gets bigger and bigger, because the more tax dollars they take in and the more people they incarcerate or leave incarcerated, the longer this goes on, the longer the egg is going to be on their face. And I think we're all, know the saying, trust is hard to gain, easy to lose. Yeah. Yeah. The trust is just lost every day when they don't do something. And, they blame each other and all this. It's just nonsense. It's like, enough is enough already. We have problems even banking. Like even the banking. What are you on now? Number 8? I think it's the 8th time that the Safe Banking Act is coming before Congress. Like, well, even back to Tamara, you were talking about crime at your place. That's interesting that you bring up, because crime is pretty rampant down here, and they're leaving the facilities to really guard for themselves, and it's a cash business for the most part. And that's, you talk about safety. You talk about the government wants to make sure safe access, like letting cash remain in the businesses and letting criminals understand where it is. That's not safe. So that is
it's not like that. They have the way the legalization system is set up in Canada. The government brought in computer systems for them to be able to run and use debit and credit cards. So in Canada, they're not on a cash basis, right? So they have cash in their stores, of course, but they can use credit cards and they can use debit at the stores in Canada.
Yeah, but there are still some problems around that. I know businesses that have had to that have had major issues with it. But back to Tamara, you were saying like
one of the other problems I think in the U.S. is and you'll tell me about this in Canada, but the war on drugs down here was, I think, much bigger deal, right? Like I remember going through school. I remember it was.
Oh yeah, we have the DARE program here though too.
You had it there too. Okay. Cool.
Oh yeah, we have the DARE program. Prior to probably 2000, cannabis was like the devil's lettuce, just as the same as it is still down there, and it still is to some people here. Like, don't kid yourself. We have doctors, lobbyists in the college and physicians, and our Health Canada doesn't recognize cannabis as a medicine. Like everything that we've gotten has been forced by patients through the court systems. So nothing is our government hasn't been friendly and all nice and rolling out the red carpet for us. That's not been the case. It's been the case of patients like Al and myself and Debbie Stoltz-Giffen and Allison Murden and Ted Smith and all these people that have gone. I fought with the College of Physicians in Alberta. I had to fly to Ontario to get my first medical licensing. It's ridiculous. And still now to this day, patients have to pay to get a license to grow cannabis.
So do you want to finish your what you're saying there, Scott, on the crime end of things, and then we'll go to break?
Yeah, I was talking about that I think this, and we're connecting it between both countries here, is the stigma is very deep,
Yeah.
And it's good. And I'm glad you brought up, physicians, because, having family members that went through cancer and were at Stanford University, and doctors are saying, no, don't use cannabis, blah, 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 but take all these pills. And when you read the side effects of the pills, sure looks like the side effects are killing them, not the process, not the medicine they're giving them. And so anyway, it's one of my theses that the stigma is so ingrained because 70 years of hammering people and telling them that it is devil's lettuce, just because it's, available doesn't mean they're going to change their mind and say, okay, now I'm going to try it. Or that I think it's beneficial.
Well, it's legal to have hard drugs in British Columbia, 2.5 grams. It doesn't mean I'm going to run out and start banging heroin just because it's legal.
Yeah, Toronto's shooting for the same thing. Yeah. All right, break time. When we return, we'll continue our talk and our discussion with our guest, Scott Jennings. This is the Pace Radio Show. We're live here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net. In February of 2022, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and Ted Smith were fined $6.5 million. This for helping 8,500 patients with access to medical cannabis. In our interview with Ted, he spoke to us about how people can donate to help in an upcoming court challenge. And here is part of that interview. From what I've seen lately, I believe that you've got something that you're trying to do as far as fundraising to deal with this next court challenge.
For now, people can write checks directly to Jack Lloyd Law Corporation or send e-transfers to save the VCBC at gmail.com. I guess those are the two easiest ways for people to help right now.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net. Hello and welcome back. You're watching the Pace Radio Show. We're live here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com. Tonight on the program, we're joined by our guest, Scott Jennings, the CEO of Pantry Food Company, which we're going to get into right now. Before the break, we talked about how you got involved in cannabis and your medical use and several other different things that we discussed. And you mentioned Pantry. So Pantry is one of your businesses. So fill us in on what all it is about.
Yeah, so kind of going back to those New York days, I grew up with a lot of Italian friends, and I like to eat, anything that a New York deli was serving up. And, I think as we all get older, there's a know better, do better trend. And I realized that, poor ingredients in my body, shit in, shit out, right? And it's kind of like what we were talking about with the swag in college. There's quality cannabis and there's not quality. And so, I look at a lot of trends, Al, and one of the trends is, we're eating more than we ever have, right? But we're getting less nutrients than we ever had. Okay. And so, some people here in America, we think that the food is killing us, quite frankly. I mean, you're getting no nutritional value and you're getting a bunch of bad ingredients. I mean, one of the ones that I'm very adamant against, and I know Chef Jordan Wagman is sugar. I mean, you look at the amount of sugar in an American diet, it's enormous. And so,
Yes.
When I looked to cannabis and I said, this is a medical, this is a wellness product, and I saw people doing what we did 30 years ago by taking something good and mixing it with harmful ingredients, artificial flavors, colors, dyes, all those things. I mean, it like the whole stomach started, gut wrenching. And I said, God, we can't do that. There's certain people that have fought really hard to make healthy food, and it's still not, affordable. I'd like to make that clear. I mean, eating healthy is an expensive endeavor. But offering that is important. And so, to me, holistically, I thought, why don't we take better for you ingredients and marry it with cannabis, right? So you're getting the benefits of cannabinoids, but then you're also getting the benefits of nutrition. And, we have nurses and doctors as advisors. And, if somebody gets sick, you ask a lot of people these days, they change their diet almost immediately, right? And now maybe they should change their diet earlier than that. But diet has a very strong correlation to the diseases that a lot of us are getting. But back to capitalism and money, they made us think that there was nothing wrong. And, I mean, one of the ones that gets me all flustered in my head is I grew up that milk made your bones strong. And now you learn as you're older that milk may actually not be good for your bones at all. And you feel like your childhood was a lie. And so to me, I had a North Star. I said, can you take better for you or whole food ingredients, marry it with cannabis, pair those together and pull in adaptogens, right? Because cannabis is an adaptogen, and look to consumers and what are they looking for, right? Not like a Louis Vuitton high end, right? Which in full transparency, a marketing agency got to me at the beginning and they tried to get Pantry to be high end and all that. I said, I like functional, healthy, daily vitamin supplements, right? And so we started looking at the major reasons people are consuming cannabis. One was very tied to my personal story, which was sleep. And we partnered up with a nutritionist, and my partner's a chef. And we started looking and we said, well, what's going on? How can we create a better sleep product? And all the sleep products out there, they take, CBN or cannabis and they marry it with sugar. And, sugar's, again, not very good for you, not necessarily something you should have before bed either. So we did a vegan paleo raw cacao base. And we married that with adaptogens like valerian root and L-theanine and passion fruit flower and cannabinoids. You know, I'm a student, you know, and so I don't know if I'm ever going to get it right. I just want to keep learning from patients and consumers. And what we learned was consumers love it. It's working. And while everybody says, well, everybody wants a night gummy, nobody wants a night chocolate. I said, once you educate them on not having sugar before they go to bed, you know, this will resonate more with them. And true to any medical patient, when you give them something that works for them, they're very, very vocal. They'll fight.
Good for diabetics too.
Say it again.
Good for diabetics too, because so many people can't eat any of our cannabis baking or anything because they can't have sugar.
My good friend is a type 1 diabetic, and did he raise awareness in my head, right, about how bad diabetes is in America, especially in certain demographics. And when you go into a store and you look at edibles, you say, well, I can't have any of them. And so that's a real shame. And so, yes, making something that was low glycemic, diabetic friendly, but there's all these other food specifications, right? Just like people in their personalization with cannabis, there's personalization in food, allergies, vegan, paleo, low sugar, you name it, right? Like people are looking for healthier products, and it's not a generalized approach anymore. And so that was why we started Pantry, and we just wanted to offer people better products. We think that consumers deserve better, and we try to layer it on with other benefits, right? Like I think you two may know, and I'm learning, sure, that cannabis has an antiviral, right? It could be very good for your immune system. And so marrying it with turmeric and ginger and cinnamon, right? That could be a very powerful superfood bite for you. And, you know, that's what we're focused on. We're never done iterating, but we're always constantly making things better. And the consumers have really spoken up. They love it. And, you know, one of the learnings I got here was don't try to sell a 20-year-old, which I was back in the day, healthy edibles, you know? And it's your invincible 20s for a reason, right? Like,
exactly.
You'll put anything in your body, but as you get older, you realize, okay, you know, I shouldn't be having that crap anymore. And so on the right there, you've got Dr. Deb Kimlish. She's amazing. And then on the left there, you got Chef Michael Magliano. He was a plant-based culinary chef trained 20 something years ago, before plant-based culinary was a thing. And I've got a team of experts around me that inform me. I feel like I'm the crazy truck driver, and I'm driving through the store, and I have all these amazing advisors around me helping me out.
Well, I can tell you, Tamara, one of his pictures he sent for the announcement does say crazy all on it, because he's sitting in a trough full of ice.
Yeah.
You guys don't do ice baths in Canada?
We live in. We don't need to dip. We live in an iceberg half the year. No. We walk outside and our faces freeze. No, we're good.
Well, you know, even that, I'll tell you, Wim Hof and the people that are, ice bath fanatics, they educate you, because a lot of it goes back to inflammation, right? You realize that cannabis is very good for, reducing inflammation. Yeah. Ice baths are good for inflammation. And if you read about a lot of problems with your piping in your body, inflammation can really slow you down, and diseases could come on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big time. We
both live with them. We both live with them.
I have disease, and anti-inflammatory pills are just not the thing. So knowing that cannabis has got, anti-inflammatory properties in it, search out for those strains or those terpenes that can help with that.
Absolutely. And so one of my big visions here is that we're not really trying to sell a product. We're really trying to lean into a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So that ice bath was an event. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Down here in Los Angeles, because we know people don't want us to sell them stuff. Like, we want to go in and bring them yoga and breathing exercise. Maybe it's a sound bath. Mm-hmm. Like, there's all these modalities that, like, in my younger age, I'd be like, oh, y'all are hippy dippy, like, get that out of here. And as I learn more and I get educated more, I realize that these are all really good for you. And that if you can bring people together to experience that, plus the community, we learn from each other, we feel better, we go home, we sleep better, and then you're better for your family and your community.
Yeah, and I can tell you some of these things here that I'm showing on the screen look pretty yummy. These recipes.
I mean, one of the best gifts is working with a chef. I've never eaten so good. I mean, he is phenomenal. And we've done high-end dinners for the Kardashians. We've done dinners for executives. And man, a chef, whether it's Chef Jordan Wagman or Chef Michael Magliano, when they go to work, I mean, they are artists and they care. And what I like about them is they care about the farmer. And it reminds me of cannabis, about caring for that farmer. And we're trying to tie that together because Mendocino is going through a really tough time. Craft cannabis in California is going through a tough time as people build the mega facilities. And if you notice, usually the three of us rather know the craft grower, rather know, how it's produced. It builds a better loyalty and connection. And so I love the chefs that do that. And I think that's a parallel to cannabis.
Yeah, the micros seem to be taking off here in Canada much more now than the larger companies. So
that's good. I mean, do you guys go to the craft growers? Is there like a connection between the patients and the consumers and like going to the craft facilities?
Well,
we're really not allowed to.
There are some.
You can't bring people in to see it. Like Health Canada doesn't want you sharing. It's supposed to be a big secret that you're a patient. You're not supposed to bring people into your gardens. So we've done it. Like, do it anyway. But
yeah. I was going to say something there to answer your question on that. No, I've lost it. I hate that.
We were talking about, can you go to the grow? I mean, that's it's like,
well, at one time, even at one time, a designated grower, so somebody could grow for you. You weren't even allowed to go to your grower's garden to see your plants.
What's next? If you're home growing, you have to put it in another room and you can't see your own home.
No, in British Columbia, they finally made it so that the microcraft can be bought to the store, to just like the recreation. Yeah. But even growing, you cannot have them outside where anybody can see them. They can't be in your front window or anybody can see them.
You can't grow plants on your balcony. There was a place. It was a garden show. People were showing their spring flowers, and they had 3 cannabis plants growing on their property. But because they invited people onto their property, it made it public. You couldn't see the plants from the road. But once they brought them on the property, they could see it, and they got charged for it.
No, there was never charges. They got raided, but they never charged.
They got raided for it. There you go.
They raided them. They took the plants, and the reason was
all that crap.
They had to go there. They got raided, but they never were charged with anything. But because an RCMP officer had gone to their garden tour.
How big or small is the home grow market there? Like, what do you see out there?
Well, everybody can grow 4 plants, and usually people grow. Most of the stories I hear about people are growing them outdoors. There are people who are growing indoors in the tents. 4 plants for some people isn't very much, as far as and so they either supplement by going to the stores or they just ignore that 4 plant rule,
Yeah, but if you get caught doing that, you can go to jail for in Canada.
For how long? How long?
Well, it depends on how many plants, your size of your garden. But say, for example, let's say you could get as high as 14 years for things such as giving cannabis to a minor. So if you're 19 and let's say you sold a quarter bag to a 17-year-old, technically you could be.
But here's another dilemma.
Facing jail time.
In each province is different because in British Columbia, the age is 19 and in Alberta, it's 18. So
Quebec, it's 21.
Is that 21 in Quebec? That was an 18. everywhere.
What about
18 to get your alcohol or something.
what about the traditional or black market? Are you guys seeing that still thriving? It's going down.
I say we've got 3 markets here in Canada. We have our legal market, we have our legacy market, we have our indigenous market.
The indigenous markets.
And the indigenous market's doing very well. You can
Tell me more about that.
You can get ounces at a indigenous market at stores from anywhere from $10 to $30 an ounce. 3 ounces for $75.
But because they're on sovereign land, like
they're on sovereign land,
the government can't tell them what to do. The RCMP can't go in there and bust them.
They signing treaties for being able to grow their own medicines and stuff like that. That's where this all falls under. And they're right now, they started, I'm going to say, our sponsor there that you've seen in the commercial, Legacy 420, they started about 8 years ago when the business opened, and the police showed up at their place and they explained what they were doing and why they were doing it. They were visited one more time, and that was it. That's all that's ever happened. And now it's gone from a little store to a 10,000 square foot facility that isn't big enough, and they got their own production line, produce all their own products. Like 90% of the products that they sell and they produce themselves. Employ several people on the reserve. It's been good, and it's gotten to the point where within that reserve itself, there's probably about 40 stores. So, and then slowly that's all spread all over Canada, and now you've got the Medicine Wheel. They started in Alderville. Now they are going into urban areas. They've left the reserve in locations and going into urban areas and saying sovereign land as well. So like before all our sports games and everything, we talk about using the land that belonged to so and so in the communities, the Indian communities on the reserves, but when it comes to the stores, so they're doing the same thing. This is our land. We're putting the stores in there.
Why don't more people shop there? Is it just a convenience thing?
Why don't more people shop there?
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to the reserves, they're not like, for me, I'm in a good spot, okay? Because there's one to the left and one to the right of me, about an hour. So it's great for me. But there's other places. Well, I know, Tamara, you're close to a reserve.
There is one on the reserve here where I'm in Tanaha and Acom, but it's still like on the reserve, right? So you got to drive onto the reserve, and if you're feeling a bit white, not wanting to go, because that's how some people are, they won't go down there. And there's a lot of racism and bias still, but I go down there, but it's still an hour drive for me to go out there because it's rural, right? Like even like the cities, like even to go, but in Alberta, like Brockett and Standoff, they don't have them because those reserves have done, they want no drugs. They've kicked off all the drug dealers. They've made it prohibition 901. Never mind, we've got Mormons in Cardston, right? And a Mormon temple right beside the reserve. So they're dry towns down there that you can't even get alcohol, never mind cannabis.
Yeah, exactly. So and then as far as the legacy end of things, like in Toronto, for example, they have markets that go on, and the vendors are at the markets selling their wares, and they're not in the legal market, but they're doing their things. There's July, in July there's an Indigenous Cup that's held about an hour away from here, and it'll have people from I'm going to say all 3 markets. Yeah. But again, maybe
cannabis is
going.
Wouldn't be
a legal retail store in there, but there would be a legal business in there, such as Shatterizer.
How are they able to do that?
I don't know. They do it.
That's what Asia does too. Like Asia had the 42 Live, and some of the, like Ross Gold was there.
Yeah.
They can't hand out any of their merchandise, like as far as their cannabis, but they can hand out swag.
Yeah. So, Scott, back to your business end of things. The products, they're all obviously all made, as you said, by the chefs and stuff. Do you do custom orders on things? And you mentioned other ethogens. Do you do, for example, do you have psilocybin mushrooms in them, or is it just more along the way of some of the other products that you mentioned, such as ginger and things?
Well, we are very aware of the psilocybin market and big fans of it, and we put lion's mane in our Good Day Bite with the turmeric and ginger, and so that was we put the little mushroom on the package too. It's our way of winking to the industry that like we understand that's medicine too, and people are using it, and part of our thesis was we initially sold to third-party stores, and we still do. But there's a lot of distance between a brand and a customer when there's a retailer in the middle. Mm-hmm. And so we launched our own online marketplace so that we can engage directly with the consumer, right? Or the patient. And I put my cell phone number on there, and everybody in the business was like, "You're crazy, don't put your number on there." And I love the calls because the calls have been more 40 to 70, 75-year-old women, anywhere in that range. And they're calling up and they're looking for help and they're looking for a little bit more of a high touch. And part of what, Flower Market needs to be a destination for clean cannabis, for patients, for consumers, right? For education. And so what we also realized is you need a place to engage with them. That's what Flower Market gives us. But also we understand there's a lot of questions that we can answer, but we're not qualified to answer them. So in Flower Market, we're going to have a drop-down section where you can schedule time with a nurse that specializes in cannabis. Nursing is the number one trusted profession. And if you really want a bedside, approach there, she's going to be right there for it. And these nurses are leaving the medical system because they're so upset, right? They know we can do better. And so they're coming over here and we're teaming up with them. But if you have a very complex question, maybe it has to do with other pharmaceuticals you're taking, you can submit a question for Dr. Deb, right? We want to get customers the answers they need, both on, we want to get them the products they need, and we want to get them the answers they need. We think answers in education first, which is not the capitalistic way, sell, sell, sell. And so we're taking a slower approach to educating more. And by that, we're learning more, right? Because we ask the customers, the patients all the time, what are we doing wrong? What are you looking for that we don't have? And one of the things that we heard a good amount on, because we get a lot of cancer patients or families that reach out, is we didn't have RSO. And so we really went out of our way. We got RSO on the menu, and now we solved that need for that customer. But we also heard from a lot of customers that take Adderall that were looking for something lower than 3 milligrams. Like, I call 5 milligrams a microdose. Some people want sub 2.5, sub 3 milligrams. And so we went out and acquired a low dose tablet brand because we noticed a lot of people were using that as an alternative to Adderall. And so when I look at the view here and you look at the personalization, I think there's endless need for product development and new brands and new products. However, there's a problem with the stigma, right? There's a lot of people who need, but they're not necessarily coming in. And we also get calls from people that say, I used to go to the dispensary all the time, but they don't know anything. And so we call Flower Market, we call Pantry, we look at your content online, we look for that guidance and that education. I think it goes back to a key word, which is trust. A lot of people have lost trust and they're looking for a business to trust, and peer-to-peer education can be trust, but a brand can be trusted too. Normally brands are trusted early on and then they sell out to the big guy and they rip the value. There's a motion by younger brands, smaller brands to say, hey, let's stick together because we don't want to sell out, and then they extract all the value out of it and try to juice their margins. And what stinks about capitalism is it's on this side and the consumer's on this side. If you want a higher return, it's coming at the cost of your student, your patient, your customer, and so you really need a high integrity investor or operator that says, I'm going to take a lower return to give Al and Tamara better value. And I know if I give them better value, they'll be more loyal to the brand, which will give me more value later on instead of selling you corn syrup gummy, with crap in it.
Yeah, or one that had some spray on it, and that's about it.
And
all right, you too.
Let me add one other thing out is it's also delivery. So we, before legalization, one of my partners, he used to go to the house with the trunk, sit down, very one-on-one education, right?
Oh, nice.
And so we don't want to lose that touch, right? So delivery is very key because, like we talked about in Canada, there's a lot of cities down here that don't allow it. And we're even talking to elderly homes and nursing homes, and we're starting to go in and educate them.
Nice.
Because we know that they have, what was it, the sundown syndrome? I just learned about that. And I would imagine I'd get a little agitated, sun's going down, and you're in the the nursing home, you get a little
twilight,
a little edible or a little toke around 5 o'clock will probably, I know it eases me down. It eases me right into cooking with the wife. And so I can relate. And I know that it would help them. And they don't want to be zombies on Xanax anymore. I mean, that's
correct. Exactly. All right.
When you have quality of life right to the end of it.
Say it again.
Quality of life right to the end of it. We deserve that.
That's the real nut in the stomach, right? Because patients deserve better, but they don't always have it to fight for them. They don't have the energy. They're usually they need the government, or they need people to be there for them. And so I'm glad to be a youthful young person with a lot of energy and a lot of courage. And I'm saying we got to go to them. We got to educate them. If it's one-on-one, let's do it. If it's videos like this online, let's do it. If it's peer-to-peer, if it's nurses, let's get them the education they need to re-educate them that they can live a higher quality of life. Because we've all seen it, that when you introduce cannabis for a patient that's in need, their quality of life goes up. That's every time I've seen it. I saw a whole elderly, community down in Florida where my aunt was, and they were all Xanax, all this. You get them some edibles, all of a sudden they're laughing and they're dancing. I mean, some of them haven't gotten up in days and they're getting up and dancing. And this is like, you're seeing the life breathe back into them. And that's a very exciting thing, especially when you're at, the later stages of your life.
Correct. Exactly. All right. Off the commercial break we go. When we return, we'll continue this discussion with our guest, Scott Jennings. You're watching us at paceradio.net or cbgtv.com. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Let's share Pace everywhere. That way it can help create peace. People everywhere advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
Pace Radio is the people advocating cannabis education radio network.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net. Thanks for tuning in. We are joined by our guest, Scott Jennings, the CEO of Pantry Food Company. As well as before the break, Scott, you were talking about a market as well.
Yep, I was talking about Flower Market and just a destination for Flower Market delivery. It's a destination for clean cannabis, right? We understand that, coming from a Wall Street background, you have to understand that retail stores are expensive. And I don't know about in Canada, but you go to a CVS down here and you barely find anybody working at stores anymore because it's expensive and businesses are cutting down on, services at the retail level.
Just even look at the tellers. The tellers is a perfect example.
Absolutely. And there's a conflict here. The longer a call it bud tender or educator spends with the patient, the more cost it comes to the company. And so this economic, trade-off, I knew dispensaries were under they were in a tough position, right? You've got an expensive retail store and you can't spend too much time with each patient because you're trying to push enough volume to make your rent. And look, in their credit, I think you two know, with it being federally illegal, you don't get small business write-offs.
Right.
So, a lot of the small business write-offs down here help balance the books. Well, you don't get those write-offs. You're taxed to hell. You have heavy regulation. The whole thing's a compressor on value. So I've been a big fan of look, when value's tough, you need to leverage technology and data. Flower Market was that, right? I think we may all agree that Leafly back in the day, it was an education site that, in my opinion, has started to lose its core focus on being an educator, and it moved to a more, let's sell seeds, let's sell all this other stuff. And it's they kind of got lost. Weed Maps has always been a different beast. And so Flower Market is just a place for people to come. They can learn about clean cannabis. They can get educated. They can reach out to us. They can ask questions. And, for everybody to know, this was a completely new thing for me. I'm not a software developer, and I had to hire software developers and build this out and comply with all the regulations. And, we have a lot coming down the pipeline here to add the feature for Cannabis Nurse, the feature to Ask Dr. Deb a question, more videos like we're having here, because the other thing that we're seeing in the data, and I know this from Zillennials, is they don't want to be told what to do. They want to hear how Al uses it and see if they relate to how Al uses it and they want to use it. And so all of this is part of our roadmap of creating a safe, clean, compliant, and easy way for somebody to go on, access cannabis, and get it delivered to their home. And to me, I think delivery is a huge benefit, especially for medical and wellness patients. Don't want to go out of their way. Convenience is a very big barrier, as we were talking about with those Indian reservations and going there. And so Flower Market was a baby for a while, but it was birthed out of a desire to close the gap. I've been in the cannabis community for decades, and what I know better than anything is I love you all. You cannabis people are nice people. They mean, they're usually not hurting anybody, and so selling to a dispensary and having a 20-year-old sit between me and the patient was a huge disconnect, because the 20-year-old was like me when I was 20. They just want to get high, they're looking for the free product or something. They want something like that. I get it. I'm not mad at you. I want to get closer to the patient, because I know if there's anything that separates a good business from a bad business, it can be boiled down to customer service. We've all dealt with businesses where customer service is poor, and it just doesn't sit right. You just don't want to go back. You don't trust them. And so,
well, a good example would be, I was looking for a specific joint, a specific brand. This is Remo Supercharged Joint. It's got 2 grams of cannabis, Kif, and THC diamonds in it. I went to 3 stores, and none of them offered to order it for me, and they didn't carry it. And one, he actually refused to order it. And I went into one store, and the guy said, "We don't have it, but I'll order it for you." And sure enough, he on my recommendation, he brought it in. Last I knew, he was like 6 cases or 7 cases of pre-rolled joints he was selling through his store.
I don't, tying the government and business together, I don't know why it's so hard to listen to the people, whether it's patients or consumers, like just listen to them. It seems so archaic to not.
And the dollar sign means more than the patient. They don't care. And that's the bottom line. This has all become a green rush, and the patients don't count because now that they've got recreational, they don't care.
Well, let me share something on that. In my later days on Wall Street, I was learning a lot about impact investing. And I know that data can be skewed a lot of ways, but a lot of things say that if you weren't so hungry, it goes to analogy. You want a cookie today or 2 cookies tomorrow. The cookie today is selling the recreational, low value, volume stuff. The 2 cookies tomorrow is spending a little bit more time with your customers to build in a little bit more loyalty. And then they won't be so price sensitive to jump around. And guess what? Your business might do better. It's more likely to do better longer on. So even if you're a true capitalist, it really goes down to, if you're a capitalist looking at the 3-month window and you want revenue today, move out of the way. Who wants this? Just sell it.
Yeah. Like where this business did that for me, because they did that service for me, I've gone back. Whereas
and that is good for capitalism. So it's just it's capitalism, but it's, in my opinion, it's silly, short-sighted capitalism. Because if you invest a little bit more, you'll get a lot more on the back end. And that's the same thing with better ingredients. And I'm seeing this, one of the questions I have for you is there's a big debate down here. Can the legal market survive with the traditional market, with the black market here? You guys,
I think it'll still survive. I don't think it'll ever be gone. Just like alcohol prohibition didn't actually kill the person who's making the moonshine. There's still some people who do make it, right? And people do make their own beer and alcohol or wine and stuff like that. But will it ever completely kill it? I don't think so. But it will greatly diminish it. I can see that over time.
It has.
Convenience to be able to go to a store is so easy for people now. There was a survey that was done on medical patients that there's patients that don't even bother to go get their license anymore because they just go to the store and get it. And Tamara can tell you her doctor told her to do that. Just go to the store and get it.
Yeah.
So the pot is like $300 comparatively to used to be $2,500 to $3,500. Like the cost is diminished because there's such a glut in the market because of legalization, and the fact that legalization, even when they grow too much, they have to destroy it. They're not allowed. But then there's stories of them out the back door with it into the black market. So is that true? I don't know. I've never seen it with my own 2 eyes. Heard a lot about it. So these big growers are still feeding the black market, right?
We're down to about the final 10 minutes or so here. There's one more thing that I wanted to get to, Scott, and we sort of touched on it. We've been touching on it on and off, but we haven't gotten right to the point. And that was talking about patient stories and how important it is to inform people. And what got us together on LinkedIn was the fact that you had talked about possibility of starting your own podcast in order to highlight patients' stories.
Yeah, I'm very passionate, and I'm loving being on this because highlighting patients, I think, is critical. And I think it's critical not only in the essence of just hearing the different individual stories and how people use it and how it helps them, but I also believe if you look at a trend line, people used to trust the government. That trust is kind of withered. Then you used to trust then you used to trust big corporations. And then you used to trust, doctors that got you loaded on opioids. And so there's a movement towards trusting more peer-to-peer. And so I actually have, I'm very close with Jordan Wagman up there. He's a dear friend, and he is the host of it because he is a patient himself. And we recorded a couple episodes, and we talked about why delivery was so important for patients, right? So a patient would share, hey, I can't get to the store, right? And they're sharing why delivery is so important. I mean, that was very correlated to our business and why we did delivery, because we understood that core need, right? Then we had an MBA student from UCLA on, and she talked about how she had lung surgery and she can't smoke, but she's in love with all the beverages. And so she gets migraines and she uses the beverages to help with her migraines. And so, if you understand Google search, you're going to go on Google, you're going to say cannabis for migraines. And my whole vision for this was if we record an episode that talks about a patient using cannabis for migraines, and then you put it on YouTube under that banner and that highlight, somebody's going to go to YouTube at home with a migraine and they're going to Google that.
Exactly.
They're going to watch that video. But the other thing is that video can be watched over and over and over again. So when you talk about the economics of the industry, you have to make education scalable. And by you guys putting these talks on YouTube and making them broadcasted, like, it has to be scalable. And so, we've been working on that for a while. I would say we're working on the audio and we're working on the pipeline, but it's one of the other things, patients, Al, but then we want to sprinkle in experts, right? So we want to ask patients, what do you want to know from an expert? What do you want to know from a nurse? Then we're going to have them on and we're going to have them answer it, because it's got to be symbiotic. We don't want to just talk to the patient or the patients talk to the market. We want the experts to come on and share, and we want them to be open-minded. Like, if Huberman, the neuroscientist, he's getting a lot of coverage. Andrew or Albert Huberman or whatever his name is. Anyway, I want him to chat with Dr. Deb Kimless, because he comes out and he makes some conclusions about cannabis, some good, some bad. But the lack of doctors and physicians talking to each other is alarming in itself, because they're all learning such little nuances. And if you had them on a chat like this, like we're all chatting, it unlocks a lot of natural discussion and a lot of natural discoveries. And so that's the podcast. That's what we've been working on, and it will come in time on Flower Market on YouTube. And it's our way of answering these questions like we're doing on this chat, and then letting the world watch it.
Doing the patients with a combination with the experts is a great idea. When I was doing documentary films in showing these films in cafes, I had a couple of films that were under the science category, and people always love being able to see them, because it gives them the information when they're sitting there watching Dr. Robert Melamine or Dr. William Courtney or so many other doctors, Abrams and so on and so forth, talking about the benefits of cannabis and how it's helped their patients and stuff like that. To me, I always looked at it, that audience would be, better to hear it from them versus from me, because they're the ones who specialize in it. I'm just the guy who's just bringing the information to them.
Totally, but I also approach research from detailed research, but individual feedback research. And there's a lot of things consumers know about the plant that research has not found out yet. And so sometimes the research hasn't progressed to a point to understand something where you have to listen to a consumer. And I think that's, very case in point on like CBN, and THCV is another one I'm very curious about, but I don't know, consumers say something, then you look to the research and you go back and forth and you try to figure out, is this a placebo? Is this real? And you don't want to tell a patient they're wrong, but a placebo could be working for them. And so it's just trying to decipher through this stuff.
Yeah, and if a placebo improves the quality of health, I'm
all for it. Bring it on.
Exactly.
And I'd also say that, like, the interesting correlation of all this is, we are living increasingly in the creator economy, and I wasn't a big creator or influencer person. They get a lot of bad names. But the truth is, a doctor that knows how to create a concise video that can go semi-viral or viral on the internet, it just means that education can get out there more.
Sure,
And so if you get, educators, experts that are also personable and can create good content with a little love from editing and whatever, well, that just means the video is likely to be seen by that many more people. And the more people that see it, the more education you have, and likely the more you're accelerating the curve of undoing all the bad lies we were told and reformulating everybody with sound knowledge.
Yeah. It makes our voices louder. More people hear it. More people, get educated by listening to the stuff, and they know maybe they don't have a certain condition, but they may know somebody who does, and say, hey, why don't you listen to this fella here who has this condition, and one thing leads to another, and
word of mouth. Absolutely. Word of mouth is very powerful, but so is Google. Google sees the most searches out of anything. It's bigger than Facebook and TikTok and all that. So Google and YouTube have so many eyeballs on it. And
they do.
And when people go on Google and YouTube, they start with the question, right? So Pantry's on the first page, edibles for sleep. So people are Googling edibles for sleep. Traffic goes up. They're finding our blogs. They're learning about our products. They're learning about our process. And then they're building trust and confidence to say, maybe that's something I want to try to see if it can help me.
Yeah. And knowing that, you're trying to eliminate sugars or reduce or have those products available for people, because as I say, sugar isn't the healthiest thing, and it likes to feed cancers.
Yeah. And I got a question for you too. What do you think cannabis brands or companies should be doing better? What's the wish list? What is, like, on both of your minds, what's one thing that you'd love to see the businesses in this industry do better?
Well, you're in the States, so it's different for us to be able to comment basically on what you're doing, because what you're doing sounds absolutely fabulous. And I'm thinking, how do we get that here? But because of our laws, we can't. Up here, I think with the regulations, their hands are pretty tied to what they can and can't do. They can't advertise. They can't change their recipes. So
they can't make any medical claims. Like, there's no commercials, there's no promos,
and no medical claims. And that's the thing. Like, you're allowed to promote for sleep, or they can't. They can't say, hey, this is better, or this is. They can't say anything at all. You go into a cannabis store, and it's all laid out in the packaging. It's not even open by flower. You can't.
And
see
even like the big licensed producers, they can't run any advertising along that line, making any claims, or even having a poster with the claim on it.
We don't make any claims either. That's why the other thing. Yeah, well, we like patients. That's why we look to patients to share. That's another reason for the YouTube, because they can say things that brands can't. We still can't make claims down here.
Yeah. I would think, as far as brand wise, we sort of got off at a bad beginning here in Canada for some of the companies and some of the people. But I think as the micro growers have come in, the craft grower and have come in, there's people such as this fella here, Remo Farms. He's a legacy in the legacy market that has gone on the legal end. There's others that are doing the same thing. People who are well known, I think, would probably have an easier time to launch because of their legacy past, versus new companies that whose name and product isn't recognizable, and that's sort of what the government wants.
But it's super expensive.
Makes it hard for brand recognition.
Millions.
What's that?
It's millions of dollars for to have gotten anywhere and in this industry. It's not cheap.
So as far as your question, branding is here in Canada is hard, I would say, but it would be easier for these people who are coming into the legal market, who were involved in the legacy market, that were already established brands. Right.
Flower market
Yeah.
hopes to do that. You know, we really hope we're looking to the legacy market and the craft growers in Mendocino and saying we want a better relationship between the growers, the legacy, and the customers. And we get it. It's expensive to move over, and you get, you know, you can get pressed on a lot by the industry, and it can be hard to survive, and it's very expensive. And
Right.
You know, I love all kinds of quotes and proverbs, but you know, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And I continue to sing a hippie song of let's work better together. We're stronger together to create a better world.
Yes, exactly. We are. You can see there some of the I've got on the screen. There's some of the brands that are available through your market.
Yep. Yeah, you've got Pantry's Us. Our Tet is a fantastic drink. You know, a lot of people are getting off alcohol down here. It's definitely a growing movement. And if you look at the data, alcohol has been steady for decades, but we never had the education that we have today around how alcohol may truly be bad. And all the research in the last couple of decades was paid off by the alcohol companies to say it was good.
Yeah.
You've got Seaweed Naturals over here. They're pairing cannabis with algae. So algae is very good with omegas in it. And one of the things that we hear from consumers is the bioavailability. When you have cannabis in chemicals and artificial flavors, your body's trying to absorb less of it. It doesn't want more. When you give it algae, you give it real food, you give it nutrition, your body wants to absorb more of it. And so that's something you don't hear a lot from a lot of research, but it's something I've been following pretty closely.
Good. Yeah. All righty. Okay, we are down to about 2 minutes here. So why don't I'll just move you back over here again. There we go. And so sometimes that messes people up. Why don't we get into the shout out? Person, place, a thing, let people know where you are, your website, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Scott Jennings, you know, you can go to pantryfoodco.com for healthy edibles. You can go to flowermarket.delivery to learn about clean cannabis. We are only sold in California, although we work on education more broadly, nationally, and in Canada. And if you're in California, look me up. You know, there's nothing like getting together and enjoying some sunshine and a cannabis joint or a healthy edible and you know, go for a nice walk. You know, the weather's nice here all year round. And, you know, we look to put on some more educational dinners. So maybe you two will come down. Chef Jordan Wagman's supposed to come down, and we're going to do something like that. And it'd be nice to get us all back together.
It would be. Exactly. Right, Tamara, we got a minute left. Got anything you want to say before I sign us off?
No. Thanks to Scott for coming on. It's been great getting to know you and about your branding and your business. It sounds absolutely fabulous. And yeah, I look forward to hearing more.
Thank you, Tamara. Right. Keep me informed about that 18-foot cucumber, please.
It's a cucumber plant. It's not a cucumber, it's a plant.
Okay, that was a good one.
All right. Thanks to our sponsors, legacy420.com and the Campbell for Lifestyle Shop. We'll see everybody next week. Thank you, Scott, for appearing. And we'll see you next week tomorrow. Well, we'll see you sooner than that. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.